1 o'clock, and we are here to hear the clerk's budget request. So Clerk Locke, would you like to lead us through that?
Yes, I handed you guys a packet. We'll try to do it in order. Sorry.
Okay.
I handed you guys a packet, and we'll try to do it in order based on the diverse departments under the clerk's division. The clerk's has about 105 employees, and under that, under the 105 employees, we have the auditor's division, county assistants, district court, recorder's office, and elections. So I gave you an overall view of our B budget request, and we gave you the 22 adopted, 23 adopted, and then a proposed 2024 budgets. And so in some areas it's going up, in some areas it's going down, particularly in county assistance. And so we'll cover that as we go into each part of it. One thing I do want to note before we go into overall budget request is last year, the postage for absentees that were sent out, they typically were always under the board. And last year they were moved to our repros budget. And then Dave had asked us this year if we could move that money that he had in his budget from fiscal year 23 into our fiscal year 24 election budget for postage. And so that really is the main driver increase overall B budget from there. So we will cover county assistance first. I'll give you a little bit of history because the program has changed and we have a new commissioner here. So there were a lot of changes back in 2021 that basically come 2022 was going to eliminate the indigent program along with the involuntary commitments that we had. And so I'll go over our A and B budget for that. And this is funded out of our indigent fund right now through fund balance. So our A budget's going down because overall salaries went down. We went from 4 employees from fiscal year 22 to 2 employees in fiscal year 23, but our salaries continue going down even in fiscal year 24. In our overall A budget savings, and we're estimating it to be about $44,000 of savings there. And then with our B budget, that's going down because we don't have to, we no longer take the medical applications for the indigent program. And so really the driver force of our B budget is cremations at this point. We still have to do those by law. And then you can see that overall it's gone down by $46,900 for our B budget over last year. And then we're going to go into the revenues that we continue collecting. So county assistance department will still remain because we still have to make collections. And then we send those quarterly to the state. We have the portion that stays with the county because we used to pay the first $11,000 of a medical claim. And the remaining goes to the CAT fund, which is now being switched over to the state controller's office. Come July 1st, we'll be making payments there. The CAT board will be dissolved after that. And so our revenues will continue going down because we're not accepting applications anymore. So we're anticipating revenue in fiscal year 24 of indigent collections of $200,000. And then we'll talk about police holds later, but the involuntary commitments, we're budgeting $50,000. So you can see that trend of what's left on that sheet of indigent medical payouts that we still are collecting on. So we still have outstanding right now for active over $6 million and deceased another $6 million for the medical claims. And then the involuntary commitments, that was basically what we called police holds. That program again went away in March of 22, but we still collect payments on that, and we get the full reimbursement on that. And we have about active around 500,000, and then deceased we have about 200,000 outstanding for collections. Okay. So we'll continue making collections on that.
Thank you. Can I go back to the personnel part of
yes.
it? Yes. So. In 22, how many staff were in county assistance?
I think we were averaging 5 at that point.
5 in county assistance. Mm-hmm. Okay, so then in 23, this year, we
had budgeted in 22, I should say that. Maybe those positions were not full the whole year.
Okay, so how many do we have right now?
In 23, we adopted 2 positions.
Okay.
We went from 4 to 2.
4 to 2, and now in 24?
Still 2.
2, okay.
And right now, I want to make sure if we have any downtime, we're helping out in other departments. And so we have sometimes our front desk person helping with minutes. Sometimes they help. Now they're going to start helping in recorder's office. I always want to make sure that we're always actively helping in the clerk's division between elections, recorder, and then anything to do with clerking or BOE.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, go back to...
Okay. On the next page, I talked about the involuntary commitment, and I'm just showing this trend because we used to budget this out of general fund, Fund 10, and that went away, again, I said in March of '22. But you can see the trend in '21, we were budgeting taxpayer levying $500,000. In '22, we levied $275,000. So that's no longer something we have to levy for anymore. You guys have any questions on county assistance?
Nope.
One thing I will bring up, other counties are doing, and I'll go back to our B budget page for county assistance, is we are no longer, we don't have medical anymore, and we don't have to provide non-medical. We still have to do cremation and burials. But the board can make a decision by resolution if they still want to do, we have on here electric, gas, water, and other utilities and housing, if you still want to continue with those programs.
So, yeah, I had a note a long time ago. I mean, I still have the note on my desk about, do we want to do that?
We
What-
typically hardly get any applicants because
Right.
of the threshold of what
So-
has to be met.
What would be the reason why we would discontinue the program if we hardly get any applicants?
I'm just letting you know, just because other counties do it, but the way we do the process, and then I think they're eligible, as Wendy was telling me earlier, for $150, and it's either housing or utilities. So, and it's not after the fact, it's a payment going forward. We're not paying
Right.
bills after the fact.
Okay.
So we don't have a lot of applications because I think of the process of the application we have.
So I probably would be in favor of just continuing it for another year, and we just at budget season look at it every year.
Okay.
So,
All right. And then we're going to move on, unless you have any other questions about county assistance, to district court. And this is very basic, and I think Callie will come up and talk about our request, but I want to cover our revenue. So there was a law change, I believe back in 2017, taking the liquor apportionment and allowing it, the breakdown to go to the magistrate side of the courts. And so we finally were anticipating that revenue, and we're going to reach the threshold. It was increasing by 3% each year, and now that threshold was 15% as of this year of that liquor distribution. And so we're anticipating likely receiving over $700,000 this year. And we took that, again, we anticipated in fiscal year '24, $700,000, and we split it between Carlene's district court budget and then the clerk's budget based on personnel, the split on that. And so that revenue stream is going to go up again. We budgeted $392,000 in '23, and in '24 we anticipate on our side of the liquor distribution for the magistrate side $465,000, which is a $72,000 revenue increase.
Okay, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Could you just explain on the description, the collection payment plan fees and the community service setup fees? Are these fees that are paid in, or are these payments that are collected?
A few years back, we started a collection department within the clerk's division, the district court department. And so over there, it's set up plans, so we're getting people to come in and actually set up and make monthly payments. We can contact them. And so that, actually, that revenue of the collection goes under, again, the judge's, Carlene's budget. But we're basically having plans so we can keep on track and remind people that they have payments due monthly.
Okay.
So that's where those fees are set up in.
Correct, yeah, we implemented what is called our compliance department. About 2 years ago, we started with one part-time person, and that has grown now to a department of 5 full-time people. And they have just taken that and developed it into a really great department. So basically, when people come out of court, they have their judgment in hand, they can go to that counter. And so instead of collections, we basically renamed it to compliance. So we're there to help them comply with their court order. So they can, if they're ordered to pay a certain fine amount, but it's too high to just pay in full, they can set up a payment plan with that department. They pay a one-time setup fee, and then they make arrangements. There's certain minimums that they have to hit, and then we do monthly billing for them just to remind them. We also just implemented our texting service, so we also now are getting payments generated through those text reminders.
wow.
Very nice.
So this 5-person department, how much revenue is being, is left over, I guess, after paying salaries? and stuff?
Unfortunately, it's not in our budget. It's actually,
Okay.
the payments are happening in the district court under Carlene's budget.
Okay.
But they have, I believe Randy and I reviewed this a month ago, and they are steadily increasing over the years.
But is general fund paying or the actual collections is paying the money that's collected? So who pays for the 5 people?
Well, district court budget under Fund 45, it's not under general fund, so it's under our budget under the clerk's division.
Okay,
And
but
so
it's
it's
being
offset.
offset.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to
Yes.
make
Yeah.
sure, because you're saying it's going into Carlene's budget, but is that okay to, that's.
So they're all in Fund 45.
Okay,
So the money is going to Carlene's portion of Fund 45, and then the people are being paid in Jennifer's portion of Fund 45, but they're all under the same levy rate in Fund 45.
okay, and you guys just keep that straight, so,
They're in different budgets, but in the same fund.
We're .2 and they're .8.
Yeah.
but I just want to make sure that we're not spending money on people that she's getting all the revenue from.
So we do property tax at the fund level.
Yeah.
So those revenues that they collect for Carlene are offsetting their personnel costs because we
That's just what I
calculate the
wanna make
levy
sure.
at the fund level.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe when we added the 4th or the 5th person last year, that was kind of, we covered it with that percentage that we were getting from that liquor proportionate, plus what they were bringing in of the 1250s at that time. So it was an actual overflow.
okay. Yeah, I don't want to spend money to lose money.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes,
So,
I understand.
Okay,
And then going on to our B budget's going down a little bit. I think it was, what did they say, $261. So we're good on that. Yeah, $261. But we do have some conversion requests, not new personnel requests, but conversion. And we're going to ask to have this covered by the anticipated revenue increase from the liquor magistrate of $72,000, which we won't even utilize a portion of that.
right.
And she'll explain why we're doing the conversions.
Correct. So the overall conversion impact would be that 18,325 number at the very bottom. What we've chosen to do is kind of get creative with the clerk's division this year. And so originally we were going to come before you and ask for a brand new clerk 2 fully loaded position. And instead we decided, why don't we convert 3 of our clerk 2s and divvy up all of those duties, equating those appropriately, and then converting them to clerk 3s. And so what you have is basically that conversion difference in the monthly salaries there.
And then we're taking the judicial assistant.
Yeah, and just to kind of give you background for those 3 clerk 2 positions, those individuals in those positions currently have been doing those extra duties. So it would just kind of be a change in the wage to basically appropriate what they've been already doing.
We're
Okay.
going from a grade 3 to a grade 4.
Okay, so it's not, so I mean, you're almost like promoting the 2s to a 3s, but you don't have 3s, so you have to
Convert
convert them.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, so that's fine, but go back to the judicial assistant and the justice court services supervisor?
Yes, so typically each year we do look at, a whole as district court, but then usually each year we kind of identify a department that is growing, at a substantial rate, or that just needs the extra attention. And so this year we've identified our juvenile justice center. Typically, we've always had just 1 or 2 people over there with the secretaries coming over and implementing that extra court need. However, just because of the new rules and legislation for the Family Act, so 1 family, 1 judge, that has increased the caseload at a multitude. And so there's a lot more pre-work that has to go into making sure that the court dockets are streamlined, that they are before the correctors that they need to be in front of, and that we are also now meeting those deadlines per the Supreme Court. And so that's the department that we have identified. We would like to have a supervisor role in that department. There has never been one historically. And
Was that a conversion as well then?
yes, and so we were going to ask for a new supervisor position. We already had this judicial assistant position open, and so instead of making a new ask, we would like to convert that one to a supervisor position.
Okay.
And if in the future, maybe next budget year, we still need that judicial assistant, we'll make that request at this time, but we'd like to convert that already open position.
How many people is this court services supervisor going to have?
Right now, 4.
4, okay.
Will there be 4 total in the department? They'd be supervising 3.
3, okay.
And currently, there is no supervisor or lead in that department.
Okay. All right, questions on
Nope.
personnel? Okay, next.
Now we'll do elections, and Lisa's gonna do a presentation.
Now I got questions.
Although we didn't really have the talk about the difference between Carlene and clerks.
Yes.
To-
I guess we can, cause we talked
Well,
about it before.
What kind of explanation do you want? Like,
Well, I mean, just for
Oh,
Bruce to
so-
understand, they're named the same thing, but they're supervised by different people out of different budgets.
One's the same county budget or a court budget and a county budget?
So they're out of the same fund, Fund 45, but the clerk's over the district court clerks, and then Carlene is over.
we call her the trial court administrator, so she's gonna be over some of her own specialty staff and the bailiffs.
Yeah, so it's confusing.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So she'll come with her request, and they're separate from what we're doing on this clerk request here for under the clerk's
Yeah.
division.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, now we're gonna go on to elections. I think this is we'll cover this one in a little more detail because it's how things are changing, the increased turnout, which requires more absentees being sent out and ballots being printed. So that's gonna increase our budget along with, as I mentioned earlier, we had that transfer of the postage from Repro to elections this year, which increased our budget by 30,000 to start with.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. There is a colored handout as part of that packet that was handed out to you for elections here. And I want to go through that and hit some highlights here about our budget. So first off, I want to talk about revenue. So in fiscal year 2023, our adopted revenue number for elections for the election consolidation fees we get from the state was $332,000. I knew that was a conservative estimate when we put it in place, and it turned out to be very conservative as the population adjustment and the CPUI that the whole election consolidation funding mechanism statewide is tied to actually has given us a major boost in revenue. We're on track for fiscal year 23, the current year, to bring in about $369,000 in revenue, so $37,000 above projection. With that, I am projecting next year that we will have $377,000 in revenue. So again, as we all know, the CPUI continues to go up with inflation, and that means that consolidation revenue should continue to increase. I still think that this is even a conservative number for next year. Now on to our B budget and A budget, I'll briefly cover at the end in regards to expenditures. So we have some line items that are decreasing in our budget this fiscal year. Miscellaneous rental, which is where our polling place rentals come out of, that is decreasing due to the removal of the March election date. So is other professional services, as we will not be having a site support representative from ES&S for the March election date, and we have already had chosen to not have them present for the August election date, so we only have to budget for 2 elections now on that site support. Temporary personnel services, which is specifically where our poll worker pay comes out of, again, decreasing for the same reasons. And telephone, which is where we fund the jet packs that provide the connection from our e-poll books to our office at each election, again, decreasing for the same reasons. Increasing line items, and I will get into more detail on why a couple of these are increasing a little further on. Computer hardware maintenance, that one I'm going to cover here in just a minute, so I'll come back to that. Election supplies, that one, actually I have the whole breakdown on the next pages, so I will just go straight to those here in a second. Legal notices, travel-related accounts, and non-capital equipment. And then, of course, Jennifer already talked about the transfer of postage from reprographics. So since I got ahead of myself, you can see on that breakdown page, I've already covered pretty much all of those reasons those are decreasing. But on the page marked trending up, the computer hardware maintenance, that is an increase of $2,620 associated with an ERM upgrade that has now been certified by the Secretary of State's office for our election reporting software. That is tied in with a B budget ask from our non-capital equipment that I'll cover here in just a minute. And then also we continue to see slight inflationary cost adjustments to those costs for our maintenance and support for the computer hardware for our tabulators. Election supplies, is increasing by $16,843 due to, as you know, our last election had very heightened turnout in our county. While I will say that that was unusual compared to past, I don't think that will be unusual compared to what we'll see going forward. Additionally, while we save costs from the removal of the March election date, we have historically budgeted August not for the whole county to be operating for an election. Now we are projecting we will expect to see a lot of school levies on the ballot in August going forward, so we have to budget for all the precincts to be operating in August.
So does 292 have any effect on that? I mean, the schools will still come after levies every year?
Yes, I mean, I'm not
Yes.
gonna speak for the schools, but
Most,
it's paying off, so 292 pays off the bonds if they have a bond out first, and then a supplemental levy, 2 years.
I would personally, and this is just my perspective on it, I'd personally almost say 292 doesn't do anything to discourage them from coming out for levies.
Okay.
Because all it says is that if you have a levy, this is where the money goes towards first. If not, you can use it in other areas. It doesn't give them any reason to not go out for that additional revenue. It just says property taxes won't be paying for part of that, but you can still go for it. You just can't do it in March.
Yes, Keith.
So 292 is not, it's a property tax replacement bill. So it's a dollar for dollar exchange of sales tax for property tax. So it
Okay.
only benefits the citizen. It doesn't increase the
Do anything
budget
for the
of
schools.
the district.
Yes.
Okay.
So they will continue to ask for those levies because if they don't have that budget authority,
Right,
those replacement dollars will never
right,
give
yeah.
it to them.
Well, that's unfortunate.
So
Okay.
I anticipate that we will see August elections consistently in odd and even years, likely going forward. We've already had some interest on that, not necessarily so much for this year, but looking forward in finding out, can they run in August for the following year since they can't run in March and with their budget cycle. So that could definitely impact how big our August elections are. Legal notices, we have already seen upward movement in those costs this year, so we're just adjusting the budget to account for what we are already expecting that we will expend this fiscal year. It has cost a lot more to run our notices in the press, and when we have primary elections, as we do next year, we have to run in a composite sample ballot in the press of all the party ballots together, which costs quite a large amount. Travel-related accounts, this has, all of those together, the different line items that make up travel, have a $2,305 increase due to both inflationary costs and accurately budgeting for 7 attendees, including our clerk and chief deputy clerk, to attend the elections conference that is held in Boise each calendar year. The past couple years, we have only budgeted in our budget for the elections staff, and so now we're properly representing who is actually attending that in our budget and where it should be budgeted. So now I want to cover the non-capital equipment. I will point out before I start on these that some of these could potentially, with your approval, of course, in fiscal year 23, come out of this current year's budget, depending on if we have an August election, and if so, how big it is this year. We will not know that for sure until July 10th.
All the levies passed, so why would we have an August election?
Well, Kellogg School District is normally on the even year cycle to run it in even years, and since there is not one in March, they have already, I have already heard that they asked the State Tax Commission if they're able to run it this August to take effect next year. So it's possible we could have that. Also, there's a recall starting in a district we share with Benoit County for a St. Mary's Fire Commissioner that could make the August ballot.
How many districts how many precincts are we looking
That
at?
would be 2. So provided no other district decides to run something else.
Precincts, having an entire election for 2 precincts.
Yes,
That
fortunately,
sounds
costs for that should not be astronomical.
Right, because we won't need so many temporary people and all
Exactly.
that stuff. Okay.
But so provided that would be all we would have in August, there's a good chance some of these, again, with approval, could come out of this year's budget.
Okay.
So the different items for our non-capital equipment that we are proposing, 2 DS300 scanner tabulators. These are precinct counter tabulators that would be used at early voting, specifically just at early voting. Canyon and Ada County they are now on HART, which is a different system, but they have been on precinct counters for several years. And I will point out that while Ada County is quite a bit larger than us in registered voter count, the May 22nd numbers showed them a little over 296,000 registered voters. We are actually catching Canyon County in registered voters. As of May 22nd, they had 108,000, almost 109,000 registered voters. We had reached the 104,000 threshold again, and after we finished putting in all our election day registrations, we actually crossed 105,000. So we are narrowing the gap with them. So it's only realistic to expect that will continue to grow. With that, we would like to make our office as efficient as possible, and having these tabulators for the early voting ballots would save us a lot of time on election day and allow us to be better prepared for when the precinct ballots come in and have those results faster.
Okay, so these are 2 scanners
Yes, you always
for
want backup.
18,000. Right,
Yes.
that's fine. But for 18,000, I know it's 2, wouldn't we count that as a capital purchase?
No, because they're individual,
Yeah, it goes on per asset.
Okay. All right. Go ahead.
And then the next item are 4 portable generators. And I want to clarify by generators, these are more like power stations that can be charged and then have the ability to be a backup for us during early voting should we reach inclement weather, or should we have an issue with a polling location losing power, that we could run one of these out there and be able to keep it functioning at least for several hours, instead of having to necessarily move that location as a quick alternative. But mainly our goal with these is to have them at the office for early voting, because we have no backup at all of any kind at the elections office, and our building is not exactly conducive to putting in a massive, very expensive full building generator. So these could at least allow us to keep functioning with some lighting and poll books and print on demand ballots. Then what I mentioned before, the ERM laptop and reporting system upgrade and the express vote upgrades for the new ERM system ties into that. Again, it is the new certification level that has been certified and approved by the Secretary of State's office this year in their testing. We are overdue almost for an upgrade, because it has been a few years now since our last system was upgraded. And it would be very helpful to us to get this upgrade and get on the same system that everybody else in the state who's on ES&S will be moving towards. And with that comes a $350 expense for a television for the ERM display. And Jennifer, would you like to talk about why that television would be necessary?
So as you guys recall, in November of 2022, we were at the elections office for about 36 hours because of the duplication process of ballots, particularly because of the write-in and some other factors. And we did over, I believe, was it 1,100? 1,100 ballots that we had to replicate. And with that, you need a team of 3. And it can take you from 3 to 5 minutes each. And so with this new process, with this ERM reporting, and I want to say that Ada County, when I visit them in December, Ada County is on HART, but they have the same kind of process where when there is a ballot that's read through the machine, it will take an image of it. It then comes back when we upload the results to our election night reporting computer that's not connected to the internet. I want to state that. It'll show us what race needs to be looked at. If it needs to be determined, was it an undervote? Can we determine, was it an overvote, or was there voter intent? And with that, you can literally do it right then and there with a team of 3. And I want to have a TV there, so they do this in Ada County, so watchers can watch this too. Correct the intent right then and there instead of replicating the whole entire ballot. And that's going to save us for reporting on election night, not having to do it the next morning is my goal. Okay. So when we hit these bigger elections with multiple races, I know in May of 22, they were there for a very long time because of particularly the constitution ballot. People were circling the write-in when there was no declared write-in, and they were putting Republican candidate names in there. Well, they had to recreate that whole ballot just the way it was. And that probably took them 7 minutes probably just to do that alone. Okay. So we're trying to save time and get the results out quicker with that.
So remind me on revenues, when we get reimbursed, that's actually general fund dollars that the reimbursement is
Yes, but it can
for.
only be used for election purposes, even though it does. Are you talking about the election consolidation money?
Yes.
Yes, that has to be used for election purposes only, though.
Good. Okay, good. And
Even
so
though it's in our general.
that additional money is going to pay for all of this stuff.
Well, I'm hoping because we have some savings this year, we could
Hoping
purchase.
we
Right,
can get
purchase
it
it
this year, yeah.
Sure.
So we
But
won't
yes,
have to ask
it
this
would
year.
be offset by the increased consolidation revenue that we are in fact mostly already experiencing.
Right, because what is it, 25,000 for this
It's
year?
already I believe 37,000 this
37?
year over projection, and I'm anticipating another 8, so that'd be 45.
Okay.
And then the final non-capital equipment item, which is on the other page, which I want to talk more about as well, is an additional security camera and setup and wiring for that. We have been approached by some community members about, we have a drop slot through our window for absentee ballots that securely deposits inside. It does currently have a camera view on it, which actually, if you will flip to your next 3 pages, we have shown that current camera view with the parking lot, with a person standing by the drop box, and then with them as if they were approaching the drop box. That is our current camera view, and we wanted to come before you as commissioners for this line item and say whether or not the current camera view is adequate. We do not necessarily have a specific opinion on whether it is or not, but we thought we should bring this forward and let you see what the current camera view is, since it has been brought up by the community, and then determine whether or not you think that this should be something that we ask for in the budget or is not necessary.
I probably would say that if it is not, well, it doesn't really matter. If we can do it, we should do it. Because just looking at this page right here, you can't see him in shadow, right? So if we have something that's closer or from the other angle, right? So now we've got 2 angles on the same location and it costs $4,000. Why wouldn't we?
And I
So-
said I had community outreach, and I said I would ask for this because I had a personal meeting with people regarding just election concerns. And I said, I will bring this before the board and show you the camera view, but I thought it was important to include, if you guys thought it was important too.
Yeah, so I think I would, I'm in favor of that.
Well, I think anything that would eliminate potential doubt from our voters as far as how these elections are run, we should be doing. So, and this is certainly within reason.
Yep.
All right, and then with that, I just have a brief A budget, a couple things to hit on the highlights. We do not have any changes in regards to full-time staffing or positions or anything like that. The only changes that we are requesting are currently our election temps, the ones who work in the office, so not our poll workers, because they get paid a flat rate for the day, but the ones who work in our office for the elections, they currently are at 2 levels of pay. $12 and then $12.50 for 3 temps that have much longer experience. That is really not even anything in our current inflationary market. We would like to increase these to $15.05 and $15.68 per hour, which are incidentally the lowest 2 steps on the matrix. I know they're not permanent, full-time workers, but that's where we place them at so that it would line up with other pay. I compared these to a position that was a front desk position that was currently in their job description. It was at this level of pay. So we're asking if we can bump those up. And with that, then our total temp pay pool that they are paid out of, we would increase from $43,000 to $47,000. The reason for only the small increase is so far the last couple budget years we have not used the full $43,000. This year we'll use more of it than we have in past years. But with that, I think the additional $4,000 should cover the pay increase just fine for our needs.
So remind me, a poll worker works for 12 hours?
They work 14.
14 hours?
Somewhere between
And they get
13 to 14.
150?
They do. If we pay them more than that, we have to issue tax forms to all of them.
Sure, but I'm just saying, I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, $15 is very reasonable considering that what the poll workers get for one day.
Yeah.
So,
And it's, as things become more technical and just
yeah,
chain of custody, it's important, especially when we get into the presidential year cycle, we're gonna have to bring more temps on, and I want that qualification and skill set
And I will say that, as I know a couple of you came in and early voted yourselves in May, the people you interact with at our office, typically on the early voting side, are almost entirely our temporary workers.
Yep.
They have so much experience and skill that they have taken over basically the early voting side and are able to flawlessly keep that process going, which saves us as full-time staff a lot of, hovering basically to be able to work on the other things we need to. So we want to make sure we can keep them around.
Okay,
And then increasing our overtime pool from 12,000 to 14,000, again, with the primary coming up, we expect that we'll have more overtime involved with that.
okay. Any questions for elections?
No, thank you.
Great, thanks, Asa.
Now we're on to auditor. That's
Okay.
pretty
Right,
simple.
that's me. Jennifer already touched on everyone's overall B budgets, so I'm just gonna cover the auditor's A budget requests. So to start us off, our 2024 A budget is actually almost $58,000 lower than our 2023 A budget. Then we have one request to regrade our 3 payroll accountants from a grade 8 to 9. And the total loaded cost for all of those is $15,000. So that would bring, even with that request, we still will have net A budget savings of $42,000 compared to last year. Obviously, that's before any wage increases the board approves. So I'll just dive into that personnel request. I had HR do a full Korn Ferry analysis of the job descriptions and the duties that are being performed by these people. Based on the analysis they did, their recommendation was yes, to regrade from a grade 8 to a grade 9. So I mean, it's pretty simple, self-explanatory, but I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, and you have 2 of those positions?
There's actually 3.
Oh, 3, okay.
Yep.
Okay, questions on the regrades?
Nope.
All right, next is, when I first started as chief deputy clerk, we created a line item for clerk travel and the chief deputy travel, and we broke that out of the auditors division. And this is travel to basically to the IAC conferences. And so this will be going up, as the previous clerk didn't travel as much. You can see that trend in the years, but it's important. I learned a lot from these seminars, from budget, particularly, we talked about this yesterday, the public defender and the savings that we had for the county was learned basically at one of these IAC conferences. So I want Grace to have that same experience to go to these conferences. Clerk Brandon gave it to me when I was chief deputy clerk. So there will be an increase, but I did look overall like commissioners and other elected officials travel, and it's not above what other elected officials are requesting.
I think it's just a 1% increase anyway, right?
No, it's more than that. It goes from 7,500 to
13,
13,000.
yeah.
Right, but it's with the offset.
Of the overall B budget, you mean, for the clerk's division?
Yeah, I mean, you've reduced some.
Yes,
Thanks
correct,
to-
yes. And then a recorder, we're gonna finish on that. So basically, our B budget is actually going down on that too. As the overall view, it showed a $2,464 reduction for the recorder's B budget. But I do want to talk about revenues, and I gave you guys a chart on the last page I handed out just to cover that and the trend that we had. We had some pretty amazing years, but it's slowing down, and we're not having as many recordings for titles. And so we're going to have to project those revenues down next year. And hopefully, it could be a combination of what's inventory on the market and interest rates. But I guess Melinda will cover that in a little more detail.
Yeah, so basically, the sum of all of our revenue has come from the recordings. And like Jennifer indicated, everything is just slowing down extremely. So, yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Oh, are you fully staffed?
So we have one, I just filled one, and then we have one more open, but as Jennifer indicated, she has one of the employees from county assistance that's gonna come over and fill in, so.
Yeah, last year, I think we had one position that was open more than 100 days, so that position was funded at 50%. And so if we don't fill this position, it'll likely be the same scenario. But we just have to see how things pick up. But we're trying to be, Melinda checks in with me weekly saying, you know, what kind of foot traffic we're getting. And mostly right now, it's passports because I believe the postal service here locally doesn't offer that service
Yeah, we're
anymore.
the only acceptance agency
Yeah.
now in the area, so
Wow.
we get everybody coming in, even from Spokane. So,
Lucky you.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so you're kind of holding off on that open position then based on the
yeah,
volume?
because I'm trying to weigh the workload of hiring another person versus having that person just for a body, and I don't think it's worth it, so.
Right. Okay.
We'll assess, like we said, we check in and see if foot traffic starts, or titles start increasing, which we'd love to see, but right now, it's just not the case. We had some incredible years, as you can see, in
Yeah,
2021, and it started dropping in 22, but,
sure.
and that's it. You guys have any questions?
So nothing, Bill?
No,
I love those charts. Thank you.
like you're all working on the way you're supposed to, you know, with your budget and trying to keep things
Yeah,
in order. So thank you.
yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for letting us present.
Do we think the assessor would like to start early, or do we want to take a 20-minute break?
Whatever you prefer. I'm fine if he wants to start and if he
Hey,
doesn't.
you know,
Okay.
I'd rather just go ahead and start.
Okay, so someone like to go? Right. But, well, you want to go ask Bruce?
Sure.
Okay. Jennifer? We're back up for our assessor's budget request, and we will let Assessor Kovacs start us off. Just picture, thank you.
Sorry about that. Commissioners, thank you. I'm just going to touch upon the highlights. I'm not going to go through it line by line. Just the big ask. And also, I know that we're supposed to focus primarily on our B budget, C budget. But just more.
I'm sorry, where is that rumor coming from? Because these are budget meetings, so I'm expecting to hear A, B, and C, and I'm not picking on you at all because you're like the third person who said this. And I'm like, nope, we need to hear all.
Okay, good. Well, that's what I was
Prepared.
informed by staff, so I'm going off of basically what I was informed. So we can talk about A, B, and C if you wish.
Perfect.
So I guess right up front is because of the memorandum from district court came in a little bit after the budget deadlines. Obviously, the first one would be the salary for the elected official for the assessor. That wasn't as part of our budget, so it's not, the value's not there, so.
Yeah, so we don't need to talk about that specific raises and stuff. It's your asks that we're talking
Okay.
about. So
All
you've
right.
got one new position and you have a bunch of conversions.
Okay. All right. Positions. The first one would be in the assessor's office, we have a technician, well, let me back up. In the years prior to my arrival, we had a fourth customer service technician. Because of theoretically streamlining technology, long-term seasoned employees, the office gave up a fourth customer service clerk for an ask at that time downstairs in the DMV. Again, this was before my time. With the growth that we've had, we have a need to revisit that, and some of the streamlining technology that has not been implemented. We've been discovering as we've been reviewing our system that it's not as streamlined technology as we thought it was, and so we do have the ask before you for a customer service technician 1, which would be a trainee position. We are also asking for to reclass our customer service technician 2 to a customer service technician 3, so that that individual has been performing above and beyond, providing training, filling in the gaps, and so we're asking that continue on, that we have the support from the board to go ahead and have her continue on with that performance of that in that role. Let's see. For the commercial appraiser position, we have made a request for an adjustment in the hourly rate. I don't have the specifics in front of me, and I apologize for that. But I will submit to questions if you have any, and I will defer to our appraisal division to provide some information in support of that request.
Okay, so you're just referencing the 2 commercial appraiser 1s.
Correct.
Conversion to 2s. Now, are they ready right now or they're in certification process?
They're in.
Okay, so they're in process. So this really is something that would happen
In the course of
in the
year.
course of the year. So then my question is, do you typically just convert them, or if there is a commercial appraiser 2 opening, you can move the 1 into the 2? Then that leaves a 1 opening that you can backfill.
I don't believe we're going to have a 2 opening at that point. Right now, we have 1s. We only have, I believe, one 3, or is it a? We have a lead. A lead, right.
Okay, so commercial is actually probably the wrong one to look at. We can look at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 residential appraisers. That's probably an easier one to look at because you do have several 1, 2s, and 3s in there. So I guess my request would be, don't convert these positions, fill the positions that are open first. And then if there's not a position open, then you can go ahead and convert. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Looking at staff to see if there's any disagreement with that. I don't see any. And I believe that's what we do anyway,
Okay, good.
is we work to fill the positions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But instead of like, if you have 3 residential 2s and you have 1 opening, then you have a 1 ready to go to a 2, you wouldn't convert the 1, you would move that person to the open position.
From within.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, instead of converting. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It does.
Brandy, does that make sense?
So when someone gets their certification, you're just gonna put that employee in a new position number as the position that's currently open for that level. That's what you're saying?
Yes, please. Yes. Now, if there's not a position open and they get their certification, that's when the conversion would happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because you had to downgrade a bunch of your 2s to 1s to hire in the first place. So that I want to try to avoid that if we have open positions in higher levels.
So I guess that would depend on their open positions. I think right now they only have an open appraiser 3
Okay.
and an open commercial 1.
Right.
So I don't know if they even have the open positions to make that happen.
Right, and that's okay. I'm in favor of the conversions. I'm just saying that don't convert if you have an open position in the higher level.
So you'll still fund theoretically, you would still fund the request, but when the time comes, you're just telling them, put them in that new position number
Yes.
if it's open.
Promote them instead of converting them.
I see what you're
Does that
saying.
make sense? Because I don't want to have the downgrade later, right? Because if you
Yeah,
convert
but
the
if there's
position.
no open position with,
Then
then
the
they have to
conversion is
convert.
fine.
Yeah.
Yep. Does that make sense, Bruce?
Yeah, it's just, it's the difference, there's no organizational chart here. So we don't know what, if there's empty spots that these people could be moving to versus just converting the existing position.
And we won't know because this is 18 months in advance,
Yeah,
so we just don't know.
yeah. No, it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
So, thanks.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, for the, let me make sure I haven't missed something, but for the appraisal tech positions, we're looking at classifying those. Really, the nature of the work that they do is significantly different in terms of harnessing data, capturing data. I've looked at what some of the other assessor offices do across the United States, and there's a lot of move in a lot of industry to big data. Really, the nature of the work is business intelligence analysts. And so we've worked with HR to make adjustments to the job descriptions, and that's really what we're talking about here. And this would result in an adjustment in pay, and so that's what we presented to you in those 2 positions. Okay?
Questions?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay. And I believe I covered most. I'm just going to double check to make sure I haven't missed something. I think that's it. All right, so those are the position asks. As for the other big asks, sorry. Beginning with admin, our budget there is relatively flat, so there's not really much to talk about there for admin, which is Fund 10. For the surveyor, again, the budget is relatively flat, no major requests in that budget. A few minor adjustments here and there. For vehicle licensing, there's been some changes we'd like to talk about. For example, in the Post Falls division, we currently have $4,000 that was requested previously to address some flooring issues that we have out at the Post Falls office. The floor is degraded, it's pretty bad. It's really more of a cosmetic thing, but it reflects poorly on the county. And However, we discovered that after we made that request last year, that the budget request was not for the full amount of what it would cost to actually do the work. It was closer to the range of about $16,000 or so. And so the funding that we have in our current budget won't cover that. So the request that we're making for the Post Falls office for next year is $20,000 to address the flooring and the issues. Plus, there's some sound baffling issues in that office. If you go there during the height of business, it's very difficult because we have the windows, the glass windows, and there's hard floor. There's an open ceiling, does not have an acoustic ceiling. There's corrugated metal on the wall, and all of that serves to bounce sound. And so when you've got a full office and people are talking, it's extremely difficult. Pretty soon everybody's yelling almost, and it's hard to hear what people are saying. So addressing the flooring, if we could do some things to do some sound baffling as well, that's why it's $20,000. We need to address that because it's very difficult.
So will the 4,000 then essentially be returned?
So that is, I mean, that's a question we had. We weren't sure if we were able to roll that over for, next year, but it looks like we're not able to do
Right,
that.
correct.
So, I mean, we do have things, I'm trying to create an office space for myself in the Post Falls location because I'm also, I'm the manager of both offices, but I'm unable to spend a lot of time over there because I don't have my own stuff, so I'm in the process of doing that. So we do have expenses that we could use that money for. There's a lot of chairs that are breaking, for the staff. They're all requesting, I think we have 4 people literally with broken chairs over there right now.
There's also some seating. I
right.
think you mentioned the customer, the public
Yeah,
seating.
customer seating in the Coeur d'Alene is kind of all hodgepodgey. We borrowed chairs from everywhere just to fill it up. So there are things that we do need to purchase that we could use that money for within the DMV. But initially, we wanted to roll it over to help with the expense of trying to replace the flooring that was put in incorrectly according to Buildings and Grounds. When it was put in, they didn't do it right. So it's deteriorated rapidly over there, is the main thing. And it also to help with the sound, with the replacement of the flooring done correctly. I was told that it would help also with the sound. Absorption and things like that, so.
Any chance you would have money left over in this year's budget to do the whole project?
I don't think
Well-
there'd be enough to cover.
When you say the whole project, you mean the flooring and everything? Because I thought you were asking about the $4,000 that we have in the current budget. So our plan and our hope is to be able to utilize that funding for some of the issues, items that
Right.
Anna was speaking about.
Depending on what, we would like it for the flooring.
Sure.
If we could roll that over somehow and bring that down, from the 20,000 to the 16,000. I do have the bid that Greg did do back in January for that, and so we do have that.
But doing that would not permit Anna to then create
Right.
office space for
Right.
herself, which is something we'd like to do to have her give more of a presence there in the office.
Right.
Sure. Yeah. So that's fine. We just have different departments come in and say, we think we can purchase this year. So I just wanted to put that in your mind in case you we're not going to be expending some other line items.
Right.
So just want to put that in there.
Yeah, we wouldn't have enough to cover the whole amount that we need for the floor, if there
Okay.
was anything left over.
A couple other things to watch out for in the vehicle licensing department's budget, or division's budget, is gas expenses has gone up significantly, about 18% as we're anticipating. Also, the armored car services that we use, we've been noticing that the prices have been escalating on that as well. We do piggyback, we use the contract that the Treasurer's Office uses. There's some economies of scale to be had here on the Coeur d'Alene campus. Post Falls is kind of on its own, so that it's a little bit off the route, so they charge a little bit more for that. But those costs are kind of escalating as well, but just wanted to mention that to you so you're aware of that.
Okay.
And I think that pretty much concludes the budget for vehicle licensing. I'll make one more comment, and that is our QLIS system. We have been in talks with another possible vendor that might be able to provide, and no promises, but the contracting arrangement, if it would work out, obviously we would bring that back before the Board of County Commissioners, but it could result in a substantial cost saving. So just mentioning that to you as well. So where we can say we're going to try and do that. So, thank you, Anna. As far as category or Fund 46, we have, the big ask is for consultant services. I think part of our challenge, part of my challenge was when the requests were made, we didn't save copies, didn't realize that we wouldn't have access to the copies, so those copies were turned in, and so I don't have copies of that. But the cost of some team building consultant would be in the range of about $10,000. I'm asking for board consideration on that to provide that to us. This is a consultant that was brought to my attention through the Idaho State Tax Commission. This consultant is a previous assessor. He's provided a lot of data analysis type training for various taxing districts and authorities, but they do also provide team building, and I think that's something that we could certainly use in our office. And so that is the big ask for that for the assessor's office. We have the Highland contract, of course, which is in current budget. We have not yet received an invoice to date for that. To my understanding and to my rough approximate calculations, when we estimated we were going to utilize that service, we projected that there would be about $260,000. That was the ask last fall. As it turns out, the work was adjusted by staff as they were working with the consultant. I believe that if we get an invoice, it's going to be probably in the range of about $30,000. I have yet to see that invoice, and so we've asked for it, but we haven't received an invoice on that yet. So the need going forward into the next calendar year, contracting for a consultant to do appraisal services is something that many assessor offices do throughout the state. In fact, there is a recommended contract by the Idaho Association of Counties in the assessor's manual, but we don't anticipate a need for that next year. So obviously that is at zero for the next year. Our expenses are anticipated to increase for the per diem, airfare, lodging, training expenses, professional seminars, and so forth, because for the first time since I've been here, we are fully staffed as far as our appraisers are concerned. So obviously that's going to result in an increase in those expenses. So that's why you see the uptick in those values there. Again, that also extends over to the journals and subscriptions and so forth. I was informed that there was a component in our current, I believe they call it the Manatron contract, the contract we have with Aumentin Technologies for maintenance and support costs, which is really mandatory that we have to do. I was informed that at one point in time it was in the budget of IT, but I think it got moved back to our budget. It's about $35,000. That's why you see a bump in that line for computer maintenance. We currently have the $250,000 in our budget for XTR, but we have a contract for $150,000 for phase one. We did not, at this time, in submitting this budget request, make a request for phase two, which would be the fit gap analysis. I would ask the board for consideration of that to include that. We really need to work hand in glove with the treasurer's office. My recommendation, and we've had previous opinions from legal counsel, that the CAP 46 funding can be used for that purposes. That's how we ended up with our contract in the first place. So it's my request that the board consider that so that we can work together with the treasurer's office in moving forward. That may or may not result in a new system, a replacement system. One of the other possibilities could be that we take a look at completely revamping the system we have to be on the Idaho, what I'm calling the Idaho standard, so that we can rely more so on the resources and the solutions provided to us by the tax commission. That's been a challenge up to this point in time. I mean, there are some reports that we can use, some we can't. But so, although it's not in our budget request here that's documented before you, I would ask the board's consideration to be lenient in allowing us to come back at a later point to ask that $250,000 for the fit gap analysis to be added for XTR. And that would be in addition to our phase one. I anticipate phase one continuing year after year to maintain the operability of the current system that we have as it is presently configured.
So did you have any additions for that right now? I mean, is that something you want to add to the budget now, or you're still working on that?
Well, I submitted that question to council on Tuesday afternoon, so I'm just waiting to hear back.
Okay, perfect. So I think when we get to the B budget deliberations, hopefully we'll have an answer by then. It's personnel's first on the 14th. No, CapEx is first on the 9th, personnel's on the 14th, and then when is operations?
Let me pull up my meeting schedule quickly.
Oh, did you put that? I have it from this morning. Is that, I mean, yesterday. Is it in here?
It should be in the PowerPoint. I
Okay.
can
Oops, let me go here.
find it real quick and open it.
Yes, OpEx would be June 21st, so I'm sure we would have an answer by June 21st. So that's when we can address that issue. Mm-hmm. Okay,
Okay?
perfect. All right, Bill, questions so far?
No.
Okay,
The only other thing for
No,
our
thank you.
CAP 46 would be vehicles. We do have $64,000 that we're planning on using this year for the purchase of vehicles, but, you know, I'm looking back at my staff to see if we have any input on our vehicles of ongoing need. Do we anticipate, Troy, any additional need for vehicles next year? Boats, vehicles?
No, I don't believe so. It will soon after. What I'm anticipating, this first ask of 64,000 was a couple of years ago. Vehicles were much cheaper. We're probably optimistically, I'm still going to get one vehicle. I don't know about two, which may, we have enough vehicles. I mean, none of them is completely junked at this point. We've done a good job of replacing them.
have you made a request through fleet management this year for FY24?
No.
Okay,
And with the understanding that if one of.
This is Ben Crottinger.
oh, hi, Ben, we're just in the middle of talking about vehicles.
With that money,
Oh, okay, sorry, I'll put myself on mute.
Thank you.
we hope to replace one or two of the aged vehicles that we have.
Okay, so I want to keep things clear. So in FY23, this current year's budget, you do have money for a vehicle.
$64,000. And one of
Okay.
the things I will ask our staff to do is take a look at the Idaho State contract to see
Yeah.
to what extent we can utilize that contract, competitively bid. I mean, an expenditure of $64,000 exceeds the
Yeah, you need
competitive
three,
advertised
well,
sealed
you
bid.
need three quotes.
Yeah, you have to do an advertised sealed competitive bid, so unless you piggyback on the state
I
contract.
think it's only three quotes over 50,000, under 100,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so, okay, so that's fine. So you'll just have to come back with us if you can't purchase the two vehicles for that amount of money, but this is also CAP 46. This is also
Yes.
Fund 46 or whatever. Okay. Okay, so that's fine. So that's, I'm talking about FY24, so
Yes.
no vehicles for FY24.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that concludes valuation appraisal, land records and mapping division. Again, no real significant changes in our budget there. You see a couple decreases, and that's because some of our bigger asks were this current year for fiscal year 2023. Those have been addressed and are being taken care of, so we don't have those recurring next year. And I believe that concludes what we have here before you.
Okay, anything further, Bill? And
No.
Bruce?
No, thank you.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, then I would call for public comment. All right, hearing none, 2:15, meeting adjourned. Thank you all.